Hi everybody. I was doing some work and decided to spend a little time with you guys today. We're going to talk about the 80-20 principle. I hear a lot of people talk about this, and also a lot of people don't understand what the 80-20 is, and some people actually have never heard of the 80-20. So if you've never heard of the 80-20 principle, the Pareto Principle, this will be a good talk, I think. Okay, let's talk about what this is. So, a quick review, if you have never heard of the 80-20 principle, it basically states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. It basically means that not everything you do, not everything, it's important about everything, okay? So, let me just do a little picture here to sort of explain this to you. Right, you have a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That of course translates right to 100%, to 100%, right? Let's say this is a project, this is whatever it is. You sort of think this way. You think, okay, well, 20% of my efforts will give me 20% of results, and then the other 20% of my efforts will give me 20% results, and so very linear like this, right? This is the intuitive understanding of effort, and I'm going to give you some examples, some specific examples later, so for you to understand. But just graphically, this is what intuitively it is, but this is actually not the way it works. The way it really works is sort of like this. This 20 will give you this much, and then everything else will give you that. That's how it really works, okay? So this is just graphically to show you guys that's basically what the principle states, okay? Now an 80-20 curve, if you were to graph it, it sort of looks like this, right? Y and X axis, right? It sort of looks like that. And this is very interesting because the 80-20 is so true that you could like predict all kinds of stuff. Like I have a digital marketing company, right? So if I were to tell you that my digital marketing company, my DM company is number, I don't know, I'm making up these numbers, guys. Let's say is number 35 in the nation out of all digital marketing companies, and revenues for this particular company are around $2 million a year, right? So let's say that was true. If that was true, you could plot my company, you know, anywhere in the curve, right? Let's say my company was here, right? And based on this information and using the 80-20 principle, you could actually plot all of the whole market of digital marketing companies, where each one is and what the revenues are, which is pretty cool because I told you that information. This is very interesting. This happens. There's examples of this in nature. There's examples of this everywhere, right? Now I'm going to debunk some of those myths about that people talk about 80-20. Now the first one is that sometimes it's not straight 80-20, like the proportions are not exactly 80-20. Sometimes, you know, I tell people, you know, I have a conversation with people, and people are figuring out, well, you know, what is the 20%? Well, sometimes the proportion might look like this, might be a 70-30, or might be a 90-10, or sometimes 99-1, right? The concept here is that a small percentage has huge impact on the result. A small percentage of effort has huge impact on the result. That's the principle. That's basically what it states. So why this is important is because we need to find in our business, in our life, in our diet, in our relationships, in our anything, what that 1% is. That's basically why that is. Oh, by the way, I'm going to stay after the talk, so I'm going to start doing this. There was a little bit of response. we're gonna try a little bit more. I'm gonna stay after the talk, and I'm gonna flip the screen around and get to see some of your comments and questions. If you have some questions about this or other stuff, then I'll stay for a little bit. I can't stay too long, but for a little bit. Okay, so basically that's what the Pareto Principle states, that a small thing has, you know, great implications. There's a mathematician by the name of Nassim Taleb, and he has this whole what he calls the black swan theory, which is, it's very interesting. And it basically, he calls different events, different little things that could happen that are the exception to the rule, that are sort of extraordinary or very improbable events, and how they have a huge impact on, you know, maybe even a theory. For example, he calls it black swans because when the first black swan was seen in Australia by European guys, it came as a little bit of a shock for them because they'd never seen a black swan. So the fact that swans were all white was like such a pervasive and such a a very true thing. He was like, you know, there's nothing more true than this, you know, seemingly, right? That, you know, of course, swans are white, but only one sighting of a black swan would change that completely. So let's just take, for example, gravity, right? I have a marker here. If I drop it, you know, it's gonna fall, right? But if only one time in the history of the universe that was not to happen, it would change everything we know about physics. You see? So that's sort of a different tangent on that, but that's sort of the idea, that a very small percentage of things has a big influence. So let's draw a square real quick and see what it actually looks like in application. Okay? So there's a square, and it's not a perfect square, but it's sort of okay. I'm gonna draw a line, let's draw a line over here. Okay? So let's call this 80, and let's call this 20. Okay? So this is what we call an 80-20 swipe. So just think about this. Whenever, the reason that I'm juxtaposing the 80-20 principle with perfectionism is because a lot of people are frozen because they want to see something, they have a project, and they're trying to get it 100% done. And this is not going to happen. I can tell you that if you are setting yourself up for accomplishing something perfectly, whether it's a website, whether it's a project, whether it's, I don't know, an organization, a fundraiser, a graphic, whatever it is, whatever ideas people have, a team, it'll never be 100%. So if you're setting up for that, then you're setting up for failure, basically, okay? So don't think that. So this is very cool to do, an 80-20, right? So I'm doing some delivery for a client right now, and I'm working on some stuff. So what I work on is I do an 80-20 swipe first. So it takes a little bit of work because it's 80%. But as soon as I can do that, then I have a really good idea of what this whole monster will turn out to be. In this case, a campaign, an advertising campaign, right? So I'm like, okay. So I'm doing that, and then after that, then I can delegate some of the work, right? Some of the 20% up there, right? Now, this is something that is also interesting about the 80-20, guys, is that there's 80-20 inside of the 80-20, okay? So if I were to do something like, let's see, this is like over here, like that, I can call this 80 and this 20. You see? So that's the 80-20 of the 80-20. Well, this over here and this is 96%. So by doing two swipes, 2 swipes, I'm already 96% done with my project, with my whatever it is I'm working on, my goal, okay? And if I were to do this one more time, right? And this, I would call this 80 and this 20, and then I call that done, that will be a 99.2. And we can work out the math if you want, but it's not necessary. You can check me. A 99.2% done with the project. Then I'll, unless you're launching somebody to the moon or doing something like that, you're probably gonna be okay with 99.2%. And so that was 3 swipes. Okay, that's for what's his name? That's Dan Sullivan. I think that's his approach, swiping the different 80-20s. So you see how this works? So this way, you don't have to think, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna start this and I'm gonna get to 100% and I'm gonna be done. You can't do that, because 20% of your efforts are going to create 80% of that total thing. So what you need to be really focusing in is what that 20% is. I'll give you an example. Reading books, like, man, you would think people would, this is a great one, by the way, the upside of your dark side. People think that, man, if I don't read every single page, I'm going to be missing out on whatever the case it is. The idea here is I'm trying to get the best, like I have a bunch of books. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bookcases plus this stack over here. The ones that the bookcases are the ones that I'm done with. And these are not completely done. But I'm not so focused on the finishing them, but getting stuff out of them, right? I can recall at least, I would say at least 1 big point, if not more, probably more like 5, out of everything that I've ever read. Right? And that's not, you don't have to be able to do that. But what I'm saying is just get to the point, get to the, to the 20% that will give you the 80% of the results, okay? So let's take an example of something real, something very specific, so that we can all, and then I'm gonna close this talk. Hopefully I answered some questions about the 80-20, and if you have some more questions and you wanna stay after, you can get to ask me some. So let's say I want to form an organization. Let's say it's for green energy. For green energy, okay? I want an organization of green energy freaks, okay? And I want like a forum, and I want to get people together, okay? So let's say I'm working, I work 40 hours. Let's say I work 40 hours for a whole week getting people together for my organization, right? And I got 20 members. I found 20 members, okay? So the way I'm thinking about it is like, okay, so if I work 5 times that, right? If I work for 500 hours, I'm going to get 100 members, right? Because if 40 gave me 20 members, that's what I have to do. So that's what most people would that's how you approach, you're thinking that every hour that you worked give you proportionally appropriate results, right? That every hour gave me a part of one of these members. But the 80-20 principle states that that's not true. That it's actually a smaller amount, right? It's actually, there are some things that you did that were better, more effective than others. There was a lot of stuff that you could have used your time better. So that's what you want to think about. So if I break these 40 hours out, let's say that, I talked to some people at the mall, right? And I just went and I asked people, hey, will you be interested in this? Let's say I gave out some flyers. I sent them in the mail. Let's say I sent some emails. Let's say that I went to some Facebook groups and start talking people up. Right? I did several things in these 40 hours. And I find out, in retrospect, analyzing it, that one of these things was very successful. And it was the Facebook groups. I realized, wow, I got 80% of the 20 from Facebook. Right? What is 80% of 20? You guys know how to figure that out? 16, right? So half of 20 is 10, right? That's 50%. So half of that is, anyways. So you can figure it out. But it's 16, right? So 16. So even though I did all these other things, what I need to figure out is like, wow, if Facebook gave me 80% of my results, what should I be doing more of? Should I be continuing going to the mall? Maybe I only got, maybe I got, 2 people via email, and then, I have, maybe 1 via flyer called me, and then maybe 3 at the mall, right? Oh, oops, I guess I messed that up. So just 1, I guess, right? Because there's only 4 that I'm missing, right? So so I'm thinking, okay, I don't really need to be doing a lot of mall going or flyer sending, because that only gave me, right there, 10%. And then email gave me another 10%. What I need to be doing more of is my Facebook, right? So very important. And then, what would be an example of the 80-20? Of the 80-20? Well, what did you do in Facebook? Was it just posting? Was it just, what was it? Well, actually, I went to some Facebook groups and started talking to people. And out of that, I got 80% out of 16. What is it, 80% out of 16? So half of 16 is 8, right? That's 50%. So 25% would be 2, so it's like 12, right? Around 12. So 12 out of those was Facebook groups. Well, think about that. That's over 50% of the total. And it turns out that the Facebook groups, maybe it only took me, I don't know, out of the 40 hours that I did mall going and sending flyers and emails, maybe that was only like 3 hours. So 3 hours of my time gave me 12 members. So this is my 80-20 of my 80-20, and I need to be doing more of this. But I only know if I keep track, and I only know if I'm keeping track with the intent of finding what is that leverage point that is going to give me more for less, because I know that a small amount of effort can have a big repercussion. So I'll close this out with this phrase. One time they asked Mark Zuckerberg what his secret to success was. And he said this phrase that has always stuck around with me, and I always thought that was kind of genius. He says, I choose when to be perfectionistic and when not to be. And a lot of times perfectionism is an excuse for inaction, is an excuse for mediocre efforts, is an excuse for procrastination. And so you can stop all of that if you realize that's what you're doing. Look, I'm just putting it off, okay? And use the 80-20, because every time you go into something and you're working on a project, reading a book, hanging out with somebody, starting an organization, think, okay, I'm just looking to get 80% on this, 80% done, 80% sort of happy with it, because I know this is true. And I think that would really help. That helps me a lot in my projects. I do the swipe that I told you guys about. So I go a couple of swipes and I'm 96% done. So that really helps. So we're gonna stop the talk, and then I'm gonna flip it around, and let's see if anybody has any questions. You guys can stay. If not, this will be it. Thank you guys for all the comments. I keep getting comments. I keep getting messages. I'm sorry I can't add everybody that adds me as a friend, but certainly follow me, and I'm gonna continue putting these content out there for you guys to do. I don't know if somebody was asking me why you keep doing the videos. Well, I am a teacher at heart, and some of you guys know that I taught piano for a long time before this. So I miss being at the board. I miss the interaction. I miss the questions. I miss the approaching a concept that maybe it's kind of easy for me. I can just walk in through the door, but then somebody doesn't figure that out, and I have to figure out, well, you can go through the window. You can, all the different angles that you can approach one entity. I like doing that. So thank you guys for all the feedback, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.